Joining us now is the author of Fear, Trump in the White House, one of his 19 books. Associate editor at the Washington Post, legendary American journalist Bob Woodward. Mr. Woodward, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I know you have every choice about where to be. Thanks for being here.
No, thank you for inviting me.
Let me ask you first about the title of the book.
Yeah.
I didn't sort of cue to the title until I read the book, and then I realized, oh, there's a reason this word is on the cover. And it first comes up on page 175. Trump gave some private advice to a friend who'd acknowledged some bad behavior toward women. Real power is fear. It's all about strength. Never show weakness. You've always got to be strong. So you're writing about the president's view of power here.
Never admit. Never acknowledge.
He thinks that if you are powerful, evidence for that is that people are afraid of you, or you have to scare people in order to get power.
Well, I think it's a tactic, but I think it's also a mindset, isn't it? He told Bob Costa and myself 2.5 years ago when we're discussing power, which, of course, that's what the presidency is about, isn't it? And what's real power? And Obama had said some things about real power being not using violence. And we asked Trump about that, and he finally said, well, real power is, I hate to use the word, I don't like to use the word fear. And this was in Trump Tower, in his, Trump in the hotel he had on Pennsylvania Avenue. It was undergoing renovation at the time, so it's a very kind of rough set. And we get to this moment, and it was almost Shakespearean. It was almost like Hamlet turning to the audience as an aside. This is what it's really about.
My sense of your perspective on Trump, having done this reporting, and you talked to over 100 sources, dozens of people who have worked closely with the president, is that fear also expresses some of the trepidation that you see in the people who have been working closely with him, and maybe that you even came to yourself. Fear as in there is something to be afraid of here in terms of this man in the presidency.
Well, my feeling is people need to wake up and realize that this is the behind-the-scenes story, and you see, I call it a war on truth, that whatever happens, let's deny it, and Trump's actions to not protect the national security when he should, to have meetings in the National Security Council, and you don't get a window into that often, where Trump is concerned about all the expense of deploying troops in South Korea or in Europe, and Secretary of Defense Mattis is saying to him, this is the best bargain we have. These troops are here to protect us, not South Koreans or Europeans. And then Trump persists, and finally Mattis said, I think one of the most bracing lines in the book is he says, we're doing this to prevent World War III. Now, that's number one job for the president. I've talked and I've written books about 8 presidents before this, and they all kind of get it. They have to make sure we don't have World War III. And here, the Secretary of Defense has to say this to the president. I mean, can you imagine Dick Cheney, when he was defense secretary, having to tell George Bush Sr., oh, we're doing all this to prevent World War III?
Well, I mean, to break that down, and you talking about it as bracing, and you've seen a lot, and so it matters to me. But the president actually questions about troop deployments and expense, and whether we're getting bang for our buck, and whether it's the right use of our national security resources. Those questions seem right. The thing that's disturbing is that he doesn't understand the answer when it's given to him. They talk about his inability to learn. So it's not that he just doesn't automatically or come into the job knowing why we've got troops in South Korea. It's that once he's told, he still doesn't get it.
Yes, that's part of it, but he also says, we could be so rich if we were so smart, and we're being played as suckers by NATO and all these countries who are having us foot the bill. And of course the military is saying, as in one scene, it is Secretary of State Tillerson back last year telling the president, what we've done That's why we've had 70 years of peace. And the president's angry about the cost and angry about this old order that he inherited, and he's a disruptor and so forth, but you can't go into the house and break all the furniture and turn it over if you're going to have to live there.
I feel like, as a citizen, I am less worried about a president who is wrong than I am worried about a president who is sort of wrong in the head. And I don't mean to say that in a snarky way. The president being ignorant about certain things, or having bad policy ideas, or being unable to learn things quickly is worrying, that you would want somebody more capable in the job. But there are suggestions that it's worse than that. At one point you say the president is emotionally overwrought, mercurial, and unpredictable. I worry in particular about the emotionally overwrought part of it. Do you mean by that he is out of control?
No, I mean by when confronted with evidence. For instance, there's a scene in the book where he starts talking about the World Trade Organization, which is an organization that actually gives us great leverage if there is unfair trade practice in the world. And he said this is the worst organization in the world, and the advisors who are experts in there say no, and Trump says, well, we lose our cases there, and they bring out the document. No, we win 85.7% of the cases, not just 85%, but 85.7%. And Trump says, no, that's not true. And they said, bring in your trade representative, call him, ask him. Trump, I won't do that. He closes his mind to the information that makes it possible for the president to weigh arguments and data. And there's one point where he is literally saying, they're saying, where did you get these ideas? I've had them for 30 years. Yeah. That's it. You're wrong. That's it. Now, that's got to, if you are the most ardent Trump supporter, that has got to give you pause that the White House and the government are being managed this way. One of the lessons that I have learned and seen in writing about 8 presidents, now 9, 20% of the presidents we've had in this country, is that you have to learn, you have to grow. You can't just kind of say, well, that's the way it is, even though I have this power. Presidents, I think the power of the presidency has grown. Each president I've written about, from Nixon to Trump. And presidents can do wonderful things, and they can do disastrous things. The process really matters. It finally gets to a point in the book where General Kelly, who's the chief of staff, sits down with Rob Porter, who's the staff secretary, and says, we need to write up rules, and we need to tell the president that if he makes one of these seat-of-the-pants decisions, it's not final. We have to sit down and have a process where the president will actually literally sign a document, a decision memo, and they say, it's not final. You can't run around and do these things. There's got to be a process. You've got to hear arguments, and time again, I mean, sometimes he does, but time and time again, he doesn't. And he just decides, oh, we're going to impose steel tariffs, when everyone has argued, don't do this. And he brings the steel executives to the White House early, and General Kelly doesn't even know that they're coming to the White House, and he announces steel tariffs, and there's a lot of economic data and arguments here in the book, but the Pentagon and the State Department are saying, no, we don't need steel tariffs. The Pentagon literally tells the president, look, we use in the Pentagon for the military 0.5% of the steel in this country. There will be plenty. We are not going to run out of steel. There's not a national security argument for this. But Trump's got it in his head that tariffs are good things, and that you can win this tariff war.
We'll be right back with Bob Woodward, who is the author of Fear, Trump in the White House.